Hello ladies, gents, and everyones. It is Thursday, July 29th, and we're here to talk about this week's space and astronomy news. First up, this image, which came out last week. Wow. So let me tell you what's going on here. So planets form in disks around stars, and these disks are kind of leftover gas and dust from the formation of the star, and they're called protoplanetary disks. Now similarly, when planets form, they can have a disk around them, and this disk can form satellites, moons, for the planet, and this is called a circumplanetary disk. However, for various reasons, it is very difficult to actually observe this happening. We tend to either observe protoplanetary disks or observe planetary systems. We don't often see this actual formation happening. In fact, there's only one system that we've detected that has what seems to be planets forming embedded in a protoplanetary disk. And that system is called PDS-70, and that's what this image is. But we've known about these exoplanets in PDS-70 for a little while. So what's new here is that this is actually an image of a disk around one of the planets, PDS-70c, that this is a circumplanetary disk. This is moons being born, a moon nursery. The amount of resolution needed to achieve this is really insane, and we have this thanks to ALMA, the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array. Now there had been hints that this disk existed before, but this is now confirmation, an actual resolved image of the disk itself, which is amazing. Also, interestingly, PDS-70b, the other giant planet in the system, does not have any signs of a disk. So having two planets in the system with these two outcomes can really help scientists learn about this whole process of not only moon formation, but also planetary formation. So this is really exciting. It's an amazing image. Super awesome. NASA's Europa Clipper mission is scheduled to launch in October of 2024. Now, for many years, the Europa Clipper mission was mandated by Congress that it had to use NASA's SLS as its launch vehicle. However, I told you back in January of this year that Congress finally lifted that mandate and allowed NASA to look at commercial options for the launch. And in fact, back in February, a NASA memo basically directed the team to immediately cease trying to make the SLS work. And that commercial launch vehicle contract has now been awarded this week to SpaceX for a value of about $178 million and their Falcon Heavy launch system. Not only is this significantly cheaper than the SLS would have been, but there are still doubts about whether or not the SLS will even be ready for an October 2024 launch. And there was also issues with the vibrational load for the SLS and it not being compatible with Europa Clipper mission, and that would have been very expensive and probably taken a lot of time to reconcile the two platforms. So this is great news for the Europa Clipper mission. I'm so excited about it. Try not to get too excited because it's still a long wait, but it's great to see progress and preparation being made for this mission to Jupiter's moon, Europa. And speaking of Jupiter's moons, water vapor has been detected in the atmosphere of Jupiter's moon, Ganymede, for the very first time. Well, it has been known that Ganymede likely contains significant amounts of water, probably more even than Earth does. Ganymede is so cold that ice is really just locked into a frozen solid surface. This water vapor then comes from sublimation of that surface ice. That is, that ice going directly from a solid to a gas, as opposed to evaporation of oceans, which is going from a liquid to a gas, but the oceans on Ganymede are probably 100 miles below the surface. So this is sublimation of the surface ice. Interestingly, this detection actually relied on archival data from Hubble from 1998. So back in 98, using UV images from Hubble, scientists detected these auroral bands in Ganymede. And they attributed this to molecular oxygen, that is O2, in the atmosphere of Ganymede. However, there were a few anomalies that weren't explained by this O2 presence, and so they attributed that at the time to atomic oxygen, that is just O, in the atmosphere of Ganymede. However, in 2018, a Swedish astronomer led a team starting a new observing program to actually measure the atomic oxygen in Ganymede, and they found, surprisingly, that there really isn't any. And so that couldn't be the reason for these anomalies from the molecular oxygen-only auroral bands. So then they were actually able to show that these anomalies were actually arising from water vapor, and that there was actually coming from the equator of Ganymede, where during the hottest part of the day, the equator actually got warm enough to sublimate that ice directly into water vapor, which is what they were seeing in these auroral bands. Not only is this new information that helps us gain a better understanding of Ganymede, but this is also just a really cool instance of how science works, this process of gathering more data, recontextualizing our data as we get more information, refining our models, and updating our understanding. And using data from over 20 years ago, we were still able to learn new things about the universe. I think that's really cool. So really awesome news from this team and the Ganymede moon of Jupiter. A little closer to home, though still hundreds of miles above our heads, the International Space Station is doing a little remodeling. So Roscosmos is adding the multipurpose laboratory module Nauka to the space station. Now Nauka was originally planned to launch back in 2007, so this has been a long time coming, but the launch finally went off last week. Now, after launching last week from the Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, there was actually issues with the Nauka module in the loss of telemetry and some main propulsion issues that kind of cast in doubt whether or not it would be able to make it to the station. However, the ground controllers in Moscow were able to make some orbital maneuvers to correct the orbit of the module, and it was in fact able to dock successfully with the space station literally just a couple hours ago. Now, to make room for this module, another module, the Pirs module, had to be removed from the space station. So this was done on Monday by the unpiloted Russian spacecraft Progress 77, which basically took the Pirs module and deorbited it into the atmosphere. So this is the first time that a permanent module has been decommissioned from the ISS. And it burned up almost completely in re-entry, captured amazingly by ESA astronaut Thomas Pesquet. And then there was a few portions that didn't quite burn up, but those landed safely in non-navigable areas of the Pacific Ocean. Fun fact, the Nauka module will provide a second toilet for the Russian cosmonauts. I'm sure they'll appreciate that. Also, keep an eye out tomorrow for the launch of Boeing's Starliner OFT-2 mission. This will be bringing 400 pounds of supplies and cargo to the International Space Station, hopefully, because OFT-1 was launched in 2019, and unfortunately, while it made it into orbit, it did not make it into the correct orbit to rendezvous with the ISS. So Boeing is really hoping for this OFT-2 mission to prove that they can meet NASA's objectives and go forward with their actual crewed launches as well. So this is all part of NASA's commercial crew program, under which SpaceX has been sending astronauts to the ISS since May of 2020, and so Boeing is hoping to do as well with their Starliner, but first they have to prove that they can do it. If you know someone else you think might be interested in any of these stories, please go ahead and take a second and share this video with them. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all your support, and I will see you again next week. Have a good one. Bye.